Hello and welcome to Smith Family Gaming. Today I'm going to do a little video on putting your plastic and resin models together. We're going to do a little bit of showing how that's kind of done. We're going to do about 2 of them. It should be a pretty quick video. Kind of explain, what the steps are, best way to do it, and some mold line removal, which is the thing I hate the most. So prepare yourselves for that. So we'll move this around over to the desk, take a look at what we got going on, and we'll go from there. Okay, first off, I'm going to show some of my tools that I'm going to use. I've got an X-Acto knife to cut things, mold line remover that I got from the Instant Colors, has a stretch goal. So I haven't really used this, so we're going to try it out, see how it works. I used it a little bit, but not really. And then I've got these sanding sticks. They are 120 to 240 grit. One side's 120 and the other side's 240. I got them from Hobby Lobby, I believe. I've also got some files and some odds and ends. Most of this stuff I'm probably not going to use. It's a lot of molding tools and everything else. A drill that I don't really need for this. Got my super glue. Also got over at Hobby Lobby. It is not that cheap, but it lasts a long time. Put this crazy glue lid on it so it doesn't get dried up in the tip here. I also have some snips. I use Citadel. Doesn't really matter. I had a hard time finding any that I liked that were nice and pointy and sharp like the Citadels were. I was very upset about the outrageous price on these things, but it is what it is. And then I've got this. And you ask yourself, well, that's just a piece of plastic, Zane. Well, of course it is. But this is what I use. I mean, you get a bunch of these kind of things. Sometimes when you buy dice packs, or this one came from the brush set of some brushes I got. And these work great, in my opinion, for you to put your glue on. You put your glue on it. It's going to normally up in a corner where it stays so it doesn't overflow, doesn't get anywhere. And then you can go ahead and use your toothpick, because you don't want to get a whole bunch of glue on the tip of your pointy thing and then get a mess everywhere. You'd rather use your toothpick and dab a little bit where you need it to go. The models that we're going to be doing today are, I've got my Hold Ray, whatever, from the Dwegem Conquest Last Argument of Kings Dwegem model. It's the resin one, so we'll put him together, kind of go over things with him, and then oops, sorry, camera, check that. And the other thing I've got here is they're stalkers, and I'm probably going to go ahead and put their commander together first. Most of the time, you got sprues and everything else. Most of these are interchangeable with any head and or body. So, and most of the time, arms are all interchangeable for all different things. So, first off, we're going to go ahead and cut off some of these things that we want to use for sprues. The other thing that I tend to use, I got these, they actually came with wingspan, but I got new pieces, I guess, new tokens for wingspan that are all plastic and look a lot better than little wooden, cardboard tokens. So now I use them for whatever I want. You don't have to have these, but to me, they make it really handy, especially when you go ahead and you're going to put in, if you're trying to stop in the middle of process, since I don't always get everything done, got kids, everything else, go ahead, clip it on. You've got the pieces that you haven't glued together. Make sure that the glue is dry before you stick them in here. You don't want to get them stuck. And then you've got it together. But what I normally do is I go ahead and I cut out everything, all of my characters that I'm going to glue together at this point, and I put all the pieces that I want in each one. Don't want to cut right at the edge of it, right up next to it. I've noticed, because sometimes you'll damage the pieces. So I like to cut a little bit further back, come back in with a X-Acto knife and clean that up a little bit. So come back a little bit, cut off, and then I just stuff everything in this little thing here, because that's what, you know, that's one person in that little box there. So same thing with the arm. We'll cut it off. Try not to get too close. It's raining outside, and apparently we didn't have any work to do outside in the rain. Can't really do my job in the rain, so today I am here, and I figured, well, might as well be doing something and making some videos, because it has been a little while. Things are hectic here from time to time, so it's hard to get stuff going. Okay, so one thing to note with Parabellum in their Conquest set here is that they do not actually have a lot of games will come with a sheet or some kind of thing to actually look at. You know, a piece of paper will show, you know, how everything's assembled. This doesn't. You've got a, you know, there's a QR code on there, so you can download it or, you know, whatever, and then go onto their website and it'll PDF it and show you how to put it together. Most of the time it's pretty self-explanatory. The first time, you know, you just look once and then you're pretty much done. You just kind of can tell which pieces go together once you get them together. I'm cheating because normally I just cut out a bunch of them and see which ones fit together, but today we're going to do a little bit different here. We're going to go and find out what exactly we need here to put them all together. With this set, there isn't you know, there isn't a whole, there's only a set of sprues. One set of sprues for all of the miniatures, and then, you know, your commander and your bannerman. So all of them are made pretty much all the exact same, so it's pretty simple. After you get the first one down, you're pretty much, you know, on track for the rest of them, because you're going to be making essentially 12 different warriors or whatever you're making at the time. Each one is labeled on here D, B, C, A, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to go with D here. Let's see, can you see that? Yeah, there's a D there. There's a C over here. You can see that one a little bit easier. Not in the light. Same thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut them off. Now we're going to find the other section of D. Ooh, certain legs now go to certain pieces. Gonna have to be careful. Okay, where's the other D? All right, there's the other D. So all right, so right now we got two arms, body, arrows, and a head, and now we need some legs. And the legs are all labeled 2 and D's. So apparently the legs are not interposable as much as the some of the other ones were. Some of the other ones, it didn't really matter what legs you put on what. They just all went together. These, apparently they want you to put certain legs with certain bodies. I'm not sure why. There's probably some kind of reason behind it. I'd have to tell you later on if there's a real major difference there. The thing says that Commander sprue parts are interchangeable in all poses, so you could technically put them in, yeah. So the sprues are fine for everything else. So now that I've got all the pieces out, they're right there in my nice little thing. This one here I actually trimmed off a little much, so I'm going to take my snips. We're going to snip it off a little bit more. Okay, and then from there I get my X-Acto knife this goes, you know, against everything that I was taught, that do not cut towards you, but you need a little bit more control, and you're not going real fast. I have cut myself before because the X-Acto knife is sharp, but you don't have to. That's part of the thing of trying to get it cut just right, but not too far away. Now you can see here that I've got a mold line. And we knew that there was going to be a mold line there because it was set in just like this in the sprue. And so obviously the sprue came down, you know, the mold was like this, and so everything in that area would be where the mold lines were together. So you can see that it runs all the length of that from where the little sprue attached. Let me try to focus in a little bit better here. Sometimes the mold lines are hard to see, but there's a perfect example. You can see it really well. Okay, and it's going to come all the way down. So I'm going to try, let me get this other little sprue mark off here first, and then we'll go from there. You're going to have to just use your best judgment on how much you take out. I'm not an expert in that at all. You know, I didn't start out doing you know, war games like this. I started out with board games, and then a lot of the other war games that I started with use resin, which doesn't have nearly as many mold lines that I can tell. At least the ones that I have didn't, and they're a lot easier to get off and to tell when you're actually gouging the stuff. Plastic, you know, you cut off a little bit, it leaves a little bit of a white spot there that you can see. But when you paint over it, as you saw with my banner holder on the Dwegum, you don't notice it once you get paint on it. So, okay, so we're going to try to get these mold lines that we showed removed easily. Now, this is supposed to be an instant mold line remover, and the way I understand it is you just take the edge of this, which isn't sharp, and you just run it along there, and it takes it right off. So we'll see. Mold lines are evil thing in my opinion. I have a really hard time on them. Because a lot of times it never fails that they are right on hands and or, you know, some kind of textured area, and it makes it really difficult. So this is working pretty well for that, for where I need it to be. I'm kind of trying to stay away from the textured areas. Normally what I do is I just take my X-Acto knife and I just kind of scrape it along the edges, and I kind of go back and forth just a little bit. That way it smooths it out, and you don't have just one flat area. You know what I mean? It kind of smooths it out into the rest of it. And so now you can see that right up here, you know, it's not as noticeable. Now on these textured areas, because he's got like, I don't know, a couple of, you know, stitches or patches or something here on his thing. What I would do is I would do kind of the same thing. We're going to go up right next to it. We're going to come up. I didn't want to use the instant mold line remover on that, because to me that's a little too fine of a job for that. That's perfect for this X-Acto knife though. So we're going to go with that, and then I just barely scrape on it, and see I can go over that with just a little bit of the file, and probably get the rest of that just taken completely away. I don't normally spend a lot of time on you know, sanding them down and all that fun stuff, and not a whole bunch of time getting rid of mold lines either, but I do some because it does drive me nuts when I look at my model and then it's like got a little mold line there and I'm like, oh, it just looks terrible. You know, nobody else notices but me. My wife does not care. She doesn't look that closely. Most people that are going to be coming over and playing war games or whatever with you probably aren't going to notice. So yeah, I just, for that mold line there, I just drug around it, but you can see that it's supposed to have a little bit of a dip in between, or a gap in between there. So what I would do in this situation is just run my X-Acto knife in that little area and just take out a little bit of plastic, just very lightly, so that you don't damage anything, but that you can, and you can also take the tip of it, to me, and just run it right along that edge there, and it will take it out enough that you won't notice it real bad when you go to paint. And his boot looks fine. So that's it there. And then the same kind of thing on the back side. Gonna be careful on these little stitches or whatever they are. Sometimes you can get away with it, with leaving it on. You probably could have gotten away with it a little bit on this all general if you didn't get it all removed, since there are like stitches on here that apparently is where the fabric is, you know, been cut before or and sewn back together. So you could maybe even leave them to look, make it help look, and when you paint it, make it help look like it's the fabric is the way that is. So I could have probably done a little bit less on the leg and more on the boot. We probably would have been fine, but I just went ahead and got rid of it anyway. Because with a good paint job, if you know what you're doing, which I don't, but other people do, they could probably make it look very much like that mold line is just piece of clothing. So sometimes, and I've worked on doing some things like that before, but to different success rates on that, obviously. But you can do it that way. And then after you've done that, you'll go with your heavier grit and you just take it and you go over those areas that need it. Now don't worry that it, oh my God, goodness, it scuffed it up. Well, a little bit, yeah. But when you get it painted, as long as you're, you go easy on it, and then you go back over with the smaller grit, and that helps smooth it out a little bit more. Don't worry about it. Oh my gosh, it totally scratched it. No, it probably didn't. By the time you get a paint on there and the primer and everything else, you're never going to really see that. So, and you go over it real lightly. Like I said, I don't normally even sand most of my stuff because, it's just for me to play on a game. I'm not, going to any, competitions. I'm not that good, so I don't really need to worry about that. Most of the time I just kind of sand over and smooth out the best part where the sprue was attached, because that's where I want the most to be not visible. And you kind of want to go and kind of, a rounded kind of, if you're on a rounded like that leg, you kind of want to go around it just a little bit to get that effect better. Now you want to make sure that you're not going crazy with it, because you can completely take off textures on it. So you want to be careful about that. Now we're going to move on, and last thing I'm going to show you here on camera about taking off mold lines and whatnot, is the mold lines on fingers, which is the worst thing ever. And I swear to God, they do it on purpose. They're like, hey, you know what? Let's make these guys life a living hell. We're gonna, put this mold line right here on the fingers. That's exactly where I want it. And yeah, I hate them for that. Okay, so and this one's real bad. Let's try to focus that in. I want to get it up, and we'll focus that in. All right, let's see. I don't know if you can see that real well, but those mold lines are at the very tip of his fingers. Awful, 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 evil people. And a lot of times, that was kind of good thing I didn't get that off. That's kind of a bad way to go about it. So, this is all textured, the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my X-Acto knife down through here, kind of nice and, not real hard, and try to knock it down a little bit, because that is all kind of textured. But if you can knock a lot of it off without going into the, damaging the texture, you'll be all right. And if you need to, go back over and kind of take the, most time it's a line. So this would be a, let's just say this is a vertical line coming up and down where the mold line is, and then horizontal lines across. And that's normally how it is, kind of, with the fingers even, there's a horizontal line with a vertical line coming down them. So, it's real noticeable. So if you do, get a little too much on there and you think, oh man, I've screwed it up, don't kill yourself or hurt yourself over it. I mean, it's not a big deal. You can always come back in like this and, kind of just work your thing back and forth and try to get it back to where you want it. With the fingers, I normally do go ahead and just run it over just a little bit, real lightly, and then I come back and I take the tip of my X-Acto knife, and I just kind of work it right over those finger gaps in between the fingers, basically. That way you still get that nice look of the fingers, the gap in between it, because you don't want that just go ahead and scrape that all away and have nothing but, oh well, look, all of his fingers don't even have a gap in between it. And most of the time, like I said, most people aren't going to notice this, but me, I'll notice it. And if I come over to your house and I'm playing a board game with you and I see that your guy's got mold lines on his fingers, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm going to be like, hey, look at that. Way to go. You didn't do it right. Bam, in your face. You suck. No. I'm not going to do that. But, if you want to kind of improve the look of your thing, this little bit will help really improve it to you or to me or any snobby people. So that's basics of that. And then I'll go ahead and sand it down. The sanding, I'll use a fine grit and very softly get those off. A lot of times you can point it this way and see mold lines a little bit clearer, and you can see, oh well, looky there, there's a little too much there sticking up just right on that one finger, and then just come back and flick it right off. I keep blowing a little bit of air on it to get those little flakes off. Okay, so it's not perfect. Normally when I'm doing this is right in my face, and I can see it just a little bit better. But I'm trying to let you guys kind of see my process also. So you want to get close to it so you can see what you're doing, because you want to make sure that you're getting it to your liking and making sure you're getting it exactly how you want it. And then you're going to keep doing that from piece to piece until all your pieces are cleaned up to your liking, to as much as you like it, and then you're going to start gluing them together. So I'm going to shut off the camera for a minute, get all these cleaned up to my liking, and then we'll come back and we'll glue this one together. I've got everything cleaned up. I did gouge a little bit here. Exactly what I told you not to do. I went ahead and did it just to prove you guys that it happens. No, I mistakenly did it. So we're going to bring it up and we'll take a closer look at what we did here. Or what I did. Can I blame it on you guys? I don't think so. Okay. You can see that I kind of gouged the sheath for this sword, but you know, sometimes that happens, and that's okay. There's a couple options here that you can do with this. Since I gouged it pretty good, you could essentially paint over it and make it look like it's a gouge marked, you know, a battle scar, basically, of you know, your sheath is a little ripped up, and even put a little bit of looking like metal in there to make it look like, you know, the sword's poking through. Or you could just take some green stuff, kind of put it on there before you paint it. And green stuff I'll show in another video another time. It's just like some modeling clay like substance, and it adheres, and you can make complete things out of it. So you can put it in there, shave it back down, and get it back to where you want it. Me, I probably will either do it with the paint and make it look like it was naturally there, supposed to be there, or I might go ahead and put some green stuff on there, and I might just do it, put the green stuff in there just so we can have a video on that. And then what I like to do, like I said, is use my little piece of plastic here, and I put a little bit of glue. This stuff's the medium thickness, and on hindsight I probably should have went with the thin stuff, but it's fine. Sometimes that thin stuff I have a hard time seeing whether or not I actually got it on anything. So these are all kind of on a ball joint, a lot of them. The legs are not, but the two other pieces are. So we're going to take, first off, you want to make sure that you are dry fitting stuff first, and making sure that they all fit together nice and smooth. These kind of wiggle a little bit more than a lot of the other ones. A lot of the other ones, they stick together and you're like, okay, that's exactly how they go, and they don't go another way. So you want to do a dry fit first, okay, and then take your toothpick and your glue. And what they say to do, and sometimes I do, I don't really do it on these plastic models, and when I do show the resin model, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But it's best to go ahead and scuff up your glue areas. For instance, you know, I'm gonna be gluing this here, and you saw kind of where I was putting it in this side here, and go ahead and scuff it up. That way the glue has an area to bond to and gets stuck really well. Okay, so then you just take your two pieces and you stick them together. I like to kind of look around and make sure that I'm getting it exactly where I want. I like a little bit of a play with it. You don't have a lot of time, so, you know, don't, you know, play around with it too much. You can get stuff that will make it go by a little bit slower. To me, that looks fine. It's would have been better if I would have maybe been able to move it around maybe slightly more, but a lot of times you can fill in those gaps and those areas with green stuff, and that's normally what you're going to do. Now it looks like these are kind of on a joined ball right there, so you actually take the legs and you glue them together separately. And so what I was meaning by that is you'll take your X-Acto knife, and then we'll do it now just to show you. And you take it and you do kind of a, just make some lines in it basically. Normally like kind of a hex lines in it. So you go one way and then you flip it around and then you go the other way. And this, and it makes sense. Like I've said before, I do masonry, and so you do a lot of stuff with, different kinds of glues and bonding agents and stuff, even with mortar and everything else. The whole point of the way a brick is done, they always told me when I was starting out that you never lay a brick twice. And the reason is because once you lay it, you've filled up all the holes, all the little porous holes that are in the brick. So it will never adhere as strong as it will the first time. So right here, what we just did here is we made a bunch of little holes and little gaps for all the little pieces of glue to go into and adhere. And you will get a stronger bond with this. It's just kind of obvious, and kind of if you think about it, you're like, okay, yeah, that gives a little bit more, not so much surface area, but it gives, kind of think of it like Velcro, okay? Velcro, the reason why Velcro works is because little teeny fibers, they're like little hooks, and they hook into the little fibers. And so basically what you're doing here is you're making little hooks for your glue to stick into and make it harder for it to pop off. Now this is a super glue. A lot of people don't use super glue for plastic. They use plastic cement. I go ahead and I just use super glue because I use super glue for my resin miniatures, and it works just fine. I haven't had any trouble with it. Oop, blam, take that. So there's that, and then you'll go ahead and make sure you got them facing the right way. You definitely don't want to glue on your legs on backwards, because once you glue them on, it's really hard to get it off. And then we'll just put it on there. So we dry fit there. Now see, sometimes, like this, where are you supposed to hex mark on there? You're just going to have to use your best judgment, and if you plan on doing that, this helps you see where you're going to be at, where you're going to be laying at. So technically I could put all the hex marks, excuse me, on the inside here, and we would be fine. I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, I don't normally do that with plastic models. Resin models, I do tend to do that quite a bit to help adhere it. I did a lot of it on, I did it almost on every single piece. I do hex mark their feet because I want them to be stuck to the base very well. But I did go ahead and hex mark everything of my Fallout Wasteland Warfare. And then you just put a little bit of pressure on the area that you're going to glue. Give it about 10 seconds and you're good. Okay, at this point in my model, I like to stop right there for a second. I like to put my hex marks on its shoes. So I'll go ahead and do that real fast. Now make sure that you're getting it, his foot here is angled a little bit, so make sure you're getting it on the area that's going to be down there. Don't put your hex marks on a spot that's going to be seen. More than likely it's not going to be seen anyway, because normally, at least when I go ahead and I start basing my stuff, I like to get a lot of them done. I like to get a whole batch of people done, because I like to do them all on the same kind of thing. So one squadron is going to have 12 of them. By the time I get them all painted, then I'm going to do the base, and the base is the last thing I do. A lot of people do their bases at some other point and actually glue the things on later. I like to go ahead and glue them on right now, and then base them at the end after I'm done with everything else, because I tend to get crap all over the base. I don't really like to. I do things differently than some people. So, you can even go ahead and go so far as to put even take off the mold lines after you glue it all together if you want, or you can even glue on your pieces all together after you get each individual piece glued. And I don't normally do that because you can leave a film if you get too much glue in an area, you will leave a little haze, kind of a little white haze. And I don't want that over my paint job after I just spent X amount of hours doing it. Okay, I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. There's probably a way around it. I just don't know it. So go ahead. The glue will give you plenty of time until you stick it. So you saw that I put glue on there. I haven't put it on there yet. And then you're going to put it on your base in the position that you want it to be in. Now I like to let the base sit just a little bit longer. So while we're letting that dry just a little bit, it's only going to take a couple of seconds, but we're going to let it go anyway. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the resin miniature real quick. Okay, a lot of times normally they don't have a lot of, normally come on maybe just one small sprue and have a couple pieces and that's it. These got not really a sprue at all. They've got different pieces here. And so you can just kind of dry fit and see where that lands. Obviously that needs to go away. All this stuff that was probably on a big long kind of sprue itself, along with everything else on it. Oop, don't drop it. And this is his hair and or beard on the back side here, which we'll need to cut this stuff out and kind of put it on here so he looks a little bit more rough and tough. He's got just one hand here to hold his sword together, or I mean axe, and he's got several little teeny sprues where the resin was put in. So you'll go ahead and you'll cut these off just like you cut off the sprues itself. Go ahead and cut them off. The thing with resin is it is a lot more brittle and fragile than, which is the same exact word. I don't know why I said brittle and fragile, because that's the exact same thing. That's okay. It's a lot more fragile than plastic is. Plastic's going to bend and before it breaks, so you're going to have a little bit more play with it. You drop it, it's probably not going to break. Even if it does, it's probably not going to shatter. This resin will break, and it will break real good, real good. So and real easily. So you gotta want to be a little bit more precautious about it. You can do a couple of different things with this, because technically you're what I was always told is you're supposed to wash miniatures that are in resin, because they use they put something in the molds that allows it to be removed from the molds and not stick. And if you kind of feel some miniatures, it feels kind of like there's something on them. Okay, and so you need to wash them before you go ahead and paint them, because otherwise the paint will not stick. I have no idea if this is 100% true or not. That is just what I've been told, and I'm just going to go ahead and soap them down and brush them off with a. Normally, what I do that with is an old toothbrush. Okay, so like I said, just keep clipping off your areas. You want to be a little bit more careful about what you clip off and everything else, because it will glue back together, but it might be definitely a little easier. And you got to sand these down a little bit more normally than other ones, but resin is going to give you a lot more detail than plastic will. So you're going to have a lot nicer of a model. And to me, I don't know if I've said it before in a previous video or not, it doesn't really matter how small a miniature is for me. I can make it look good as long as it's got plenty of detail. If it's missing a bunch of detail and it just doesn't have hardly any detail, I'm going to have a hard time with it. The more detail it's got, the more things I can pick out and start playing with. And here's this, I want this brighter here, I want this darker here, and I have more opportunity to make it more myself. With resin, you have to me it seems like you have a lot less mold lines. Okay, what you end up getting is a little bit of a different thing entirely. I'll zoom in here a little bit. It's gonna be hard to see, but find a good example of it. Now I can't find any. Look at that. There's a little bit right here. Okay. All right. You may be able to see it. I call it flack. It's just a little bit of stuff that, you know, didn't quite, you know, get off from the mold. It's just a little bit that pushes out. You know, unlike a actual mold line where, you know, you got a big, I'm just taking that off with the back side of it because, you know, it comes off so easily. And, you know, normally it just got a little bit of flack. You just run it over there. Heck, you can even take that old toothbrush I was talking about. See, he's got a little bit around his horns here. Got a little bit of flack and up here on his thing. You can, let me move this. The old toothbrush. Okay, you can tell that I've never actually used this toothbrush. So there I kind of fibbed a little bit, but you can actually take this toothbrush and brush a lot of that flack right off because it's not even really attached that well. And when you go ahead and you don't, like I said, you wouldn't technically even have to worry about it right this minute. You could go ahead and get that all off when you go ahead and wash the miniature. So you don't really need to worry about that. One thing that you want to go ahead and make sure that you're going to do is see that this one here, it's got a, you know, it's got a lot of flack, or maybe came off of the sprue. It was probably on the sprue. They're probably all on one sprue, and it's got some on its feet. And you're definitely going to want to get rid of that, you know, before you go ahead and start gluing, because definitely on the feet you want that gone. That way it'll sit nice and smooth on your base, which I wish it wouldn't have fallen off the sprue, because it makes it kind of a pain in the butt to get off now because it's so low to it. Alright, there we go. Now, this is one miniature that I just loved the artwork. I tend to try to make my miniatures look like the artwork that is provided. Sometimes I take a little bit of liberties on different colors and everything else, but I tend to try to make them look, depending on what it is. You know, if I've got a whole bunch of, you know, of minions or whatever, yeah, I'm going to make my minions, some of my minions look a little different. I did that with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the new one there, Change is Constant, I think is what it's called. Anyway, they had some thugs, some gun thugs or whatever, and I went ahead and I took all them and I made all their shirts and their clothes look different, because, you know, why not? Not everybody's going to wear the exact same shirt. Maybe if you're in a gang, I guess. Okay, I'm not in a gang. I'm not a Blood or Crip or nothing like that. So we you know, we like to be unique here in Kansas. Okay, regular folk like to be unique. Wear what they want to wear. I'm not going to wear red or blue or whatever because you know, part of some little group or whatever. That's not how I work. So, and I don't think most people work that way. So I try to, you know, incorporate that in my thing. So not everybody looks the same. Now don't get me wrong, sometimes they do, okay? You've got a group of Foot Ninja, Foot Clan. Okay, they're Foot Clan. They're the regular Foot Clan ninjas. Yeah, they always look all the same. So we're just gonna, yeah, definitely make those look the same, because that doesn't make sense for them to look any different. I mean, anytime you see the comics or whatever, they always wearing the exact same thing, the weird hoods with the red eyes and stuff like that. Well, the actual comics back in the day, they were just black and white, so different colored gray and everything else. I haven't mastered the art of black and white miniatures yet. I'm going to work on that though. I've seen some guys do some stuff, and one of their videos was colors are for chumps. I guess I'm a chump because I'm just not good enough yet, I don't believe, to do it. And if I give it a try, I might be able to pull it off. But I'm still trying to master a lot of my techniques, like feathering and wet blending and different kind of blending techniques altogether. I'm not real great at that, so I'm still learning. I mean, there's plenty of time to learn, and like I said, we're all kind of learning on this channel together. So I'm not a professional by any means, so don't hold it against me when I'm not spectacular. But I do want to try doing some black and white, because I've seen some black and white stuff, and I think learning that would even help me more with my colors. And you're like, well, what, Zane? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, it does, because without color, you've got to rely a little bit more on textures and on different areas looking different with your shadows and everything else, which, if you know how to do it in black and white, you should be able to know how to do it in color too. So, and I think that might be a good learning thing in general. So as you can see here, there's really no, well, maybe you can't see, but as we looked earlier, there isn't a lot of mold lines on resin, or at least most of these resin miniatures that I use don't normally have any mold lines, because most of the time, I guess, I don't know how they do it exactly, but it works out. I do plan on getting a 3D printer at some point, so I guess I'll find out myself how it prints off and why you don't get mold lines as much. We'll see. That's a whole nother project, a whole nother bunch of stuff I've got to learn how to do, and then teach you guys how to do, and totally miserably fail at both. And but I'm going to try it anyway. Why not? I need more hobbies, right? So basically, I'm just taking this brush right over it and getting rid of all that flack right off the bat. Okay, so to me it looks like that goes on here on the shoulders, kind of as a shoulder pad area here. And the thing is, if it doesn't fit just perfectly like you want it to, that's not fitting in quite as well as I'd hoped. I got a pretty big gap there. I don't think there's anything I can do about that gap, though. I don't think any kind of sanding and or anything's going to really change that. So I'm probably going to leave it with that. But it looks like to me that I want to put this on first and get that all the way on there. So I'm going to go ahead. This is a big area, so we're going to go ahead and put my marks on it like I told you before. Now, something with a big area like this, you don't really need to use the toothpick. I'm going to use it anyway because I've already got it. I've already got my glue out. But normally you don't really even need to do that. Obviously, because it's huge and you're not going to really make a mess on it. So now that my hatch marks are made, I normally just put glue on one side. I don't glue on both sides. The more glue you put on, the longer it takes for it to finish and get cured up. I do like to make sure that you get the glue on all of it, though. So, and the way you do that is kind of put it in the light. Okay, you can see that there's glue on it. And then just slap her on there. Boop, boop. Hold for a couple of seconds, 10 seconds or so, and you're done. Now, you see how easy there's a lot less pieces. You don't have any kind of maneuverability normally on a resin miniature, whereas plastic, you're going to have, you know, like the ball joints where you can move the arms and or legs however you want. In resin, no, you're not going to get that. What you're going to get in resin is you're going to get exactly what the model looks like, and that's it. You're stuck with the pose that it's in, which to me is perfectly fine. I mean, as long as you don't have a whole bunch of the exact same miniatures, what does it matter? Each miniature should be slightly different, in my opinion. So even though all these have the exact same sprues, I tend to try to make every single one look slightly different. And the way I do that is by putting different legs with different feet and, you know, that sort of thing, which makes, you know, obvious sense. All right. So like I said, we just hatch that together. Hatchet, or not hatchet. And then just slap some glue on her. Like I said before, there I got that gap in there that I don't like, but what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of that green stuff and we'll get rid of that. But the reason why I put it on the base first is, for one, I can go ahead and I can put his head on. And I can lock it into place where I want it. These are on a little ball joint themselves, so like I said, you can move it around a little bit and, you know, make him look like he's looking somewhere or whatever. Right there, I think is good. And let it sit just for a second, and then we're good. Always make sure that you're putting your arms on the right side of your thing. You want to be careful about that. Next, we're going to go ahead and put this on right now. So I think I'm gonna put glue actually on the quiver here. I'm just gonna go kind of all down along both these little rims here and a little bit extra on the sides, because like I said, there isn't a real definite place for that, which like I said, kind of drives me a little crazy. So, but I can see, you just kind of got to dry test it, see where it's going to fit the best for you. I don't think that looks bad. It's not exactly where I'd want it, but I think that's the best place for it to go. With these ball joints, you've got them, and you can just put them in wherever you want, and you've got a little bit of movement with them. You don't want to make them look too crazy and not, you know, and look unrealistic. So kind of get into a position of where you like it, and see, now that you got him on the base, you can kind of see how he's going to look when he's done, which that's why I tend to do it the way I do it. And I go ahead and I put my glue on the inside joint when I glue those together. And then I just, like I said, I give it a little bit of time. I kind of mixed it, kind of sat it where I wanted it, and said, all right, that looks good. And that's where I leave it. And it'll dry just like that. Now to his bow and arrow. You know, like I said, I always dry fit it first. To me, he looks like he's just kind of holding it down. It doesn't look like he's getting ready to fire it. This would look kind of silly, maybe, Maybe not quite so bad. Maybe if he was holding it like that. Definitely not like this. That looks kind of ridiculous. So I guess if you're getting ready to go on a hunt, you'd probably be holding it down at your side. And then maybe coming up with this knife here and stabbing. So kind of think of what your character's doing when you're gluing them together with something like this with a ball joint and everything else. So my guy here, he's getting ready to, and he just kind of stuck in there, so that's kind of nice. He's getting ready to, you know, block maybe with his bow and arrow, and then stab with his knife. So we'll go with that. We're going to kind of put it, like I said, we'll go ahead and put a little bit of extra glue in there. Like I said, a little bit of extra glue makes it dry just a little bit slower, I notice. And oops, if you get it actually in the ball joint. And to me, it doesn't look too bad. Kind of like it. Looks like he might be getting ready to bring it up, or getting ready to and see, I still even got a little bit of time, so I'm going to move it just slightly so it wasn't all up against his legs. Maybe he's just walking, got his knife on the ready to stab somebody that's coming out. And this is actually the commander in the stalkers. I'm going to move him off camera there. And then we're going to go back to our hole dry. And like I said, I'll come back, because that gap is outrageous. I can't believe it's got that big of a gap. I feel like I messed up somewhere, but I don't see where or how. But anyway, I'm going to have to kind of glue it. Definitely use some green stuff, which I'm not very good with green stuff, so it kind of makes me mad that I got to use it. But that's all right. I don't think that it's probably Parabellum's fault. Something didn't quite go right. I really like the look of this model, so I definitely want to make sure that I get him to look real sharp. That's the thing here, is normally on these you're going to probably do a little bit more time on your resin models than on your normal models, because it just doesn't make, you know, these are going to be way more detailed, and they're kind of the centerpiece of your army. Okay, and so like I said, with resin models, there's only one way they can go on. So, and then put a thin bit on there. Oop. Don't touch it like I just did, like a dummy. And then just take it. Oop. Maybe. There we go. Kind of. There. And then just hold it on there for a couple of seconds, and by that time it's pretty much done. So there he is. We got two of them on there. We kind of learned how to do some mold line removal, showed how to kind of take miniatures apart off of a sprue and put them together, kind of how to get some of this flak easily off of resin miniature, and went from there. Now you can go ahead and you can wash these piece by piece, the resin miniatures, or you could go ahead and wash them when they're glued together, which I did when I washed this guy, which is one of my videos for my instant colors. I'm going to paint him just like Scale 75 did with theirs, and try to, it's not 100% the instant colors. They use a little bit of their artist line, I think. And I think that's it, though. But we're going to try to copy what they did. But like I said, I went ahead and I washed this after I glued it all together. I even glued the stick on there to, you know, move it around easier for me. I didn't think it would actually... This was before I had the red grass paint holders, so I probably would have used that. But this is fine. This is going to be easier for me maybe to do this on Definitely easier for the shield, because then I can get the backside. Otherwise, there's no real way to put that on anything. I mean, the stick is directly onto the glue point. So, and I will glue those on separately. Paint this and then glue it on separately. But it's got a little nub. And as long as you just put a little teeny bit of glue in there, this isn't going to be something that's going to be moving around that I'm going to be playing with on a board game or anything else. This is just going to go on my shelf. I might put it on a plinth. I've never done that either. That'll be something new. I like the way it looks, and I wanted to kind of test it out the way they're going to do it there. So we're going to give it a whirl at another time. The soap and the water had no effect whatsoever on the glue. So I'll probably do it that way from now on instead of piece by piece, because I hate having those little pieces and trying to get my... I mean, you probably get them a little bit cleaner that way when you got them in one piece at a time. But, you know, so far I haven't had any problems with it. So if you liked what I did here, go ahead and like and subscribe and share so we can keep growing this channel. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.